Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge, or in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Glad you're here. Glad I'm here with you. Today's episode is going to be kind of an update, kind of a casual episode, a little light content, and also content with application because, I can't help myself. But we're going to look at 2 personal stories and an update because I just got back from a big trip and it ties in a lot of different things of walking the journey of a special needs parent. And so I thought I would share those with you. And so I'm going to just take these 2 stories and I'm going to give us some options on how to take the value of these stories and apply them to all of our lives, mine included, to evolve in this process of the journey of a special needs mom. So let's get to it. The first thing I want to update on is that we just got back from a 5-night, 6 days Disney cruise from San Diego. We live here in San Diego. So San Diego to Cabo San Lucas to Ensenada, Mexico, and back up to San Diego. For those of you that are newer to this podcast, to this community, you may not know that we had intended on going on this trip last year, almost exactly 1 year ago, and we had booked it the year before that. So by the time we actually went on this trip, we had booked it over 2 years in advance. Now, some of you, that might not be a big deal. I am not generally one to plan 2 years in advance of my life, so it's kind of a big deal to me. And so there's just a lot of anticipation. And kind of going back further, knowing that many of you are new to this podcast, and I don't always give the full picture of my son's disabilities and our journey with that. Just a quick snapshot to give context to this trip is that my son Levi had brain cancer at the age of 2. So that was back in 2011. We went 10 years living with the disabilities that were created through at that time, just surgery to treat his cancer. And unfortunately, last fall, we had recurrence. And with his type of tumor, this was not altogether surprising. However, I was pretty blindsided by it. I thought we had just made it past the window where we would be safe, and we were not. So we had recurrence, and so that spun us into surgeries and radiation and hospitalizations and all the things. It was a really rough year. So one of the things that was rough about the year is actually having to cancel this trip, right? Can you imagine? I mean, I don't have to imagine our family anticipating and being excited about this trip for a year, and us having to make the decision pretty much at the last minute to say, hey, kids, sorry about that. We can't go. Thankfully, we could postpone it, but, when clearly the medical challenges were more important in our lives, it's pretty hard to have the disappointment of not getting to do the things that we thought we would get to do. And disappointment is one of my least favorite feelings. Actually, this is funny. Levi asked me last night, he asked me something about feelings. What are your favorite feelings or what are your least favorite? And so we had this little conversation about it. And for me, disappointment is one of my least favorites. There was a lot of disappointment. But back to the trip, I would say overall it was amazing. I remember just getting on the ship and being one kind of surprised we actually made it. I think a lot of us in our family were kind of like, okay, is this really going to happen this time? And kind of protecting our hearts from that disappointment again. It was amazing. I was really obsessive about looking at the weather because here in California, we have not had the idyllic California weather that we are all accustomed to. And so getting to see some sunshine was very much high on my hopes and dreams for this trip. And we very much did. And just getting to be in a vacation state. I mean, I felt so privileged and feel so privileged to have been able to take a trip like that. And it was definitely worth the investment. I'll say that. And some things about the Disney cruise that I thought it would be nice to share with this community is that I thought they did a pretty great job of creating space for people with disabilities and of all ages. And what was lovely is seeing on the ship that we were definitely not the only family with a child with disabilities. There was multiple. And we have, Levi's able to kind of cruise around the ship on his own. He's able to feed himself. It was just amazing to see other families that you cruise by in your wheelchairs and you kind of have this kindredness with them automatically. And my husband, I guess he met a woman on the treadmill. He was trying to promote the podcast. I thought it was hilarious. If you met my husband on the cruise, welcome to this podcast. And one thing, if Disney asked me for feedback that I would say would be an opportunity to improve is to, instead of grouping kids by age, grouping them by abilities. Because the cutoff for age for the kind of the younger area was, I think, 12 and Levi's 13. And he really would have preferred the activities in the younger area because of his likes and because of his abilities. And yet, for safety reasons, which I also do respect and admire, they would not allow that. And so I know that there's a happy medium here. I know that there's a way that we could both keep all kids safe and that we create space for kids that perhaps just because of their age don't necessarily just fit in one area. And yeah, so this trip was just a wonderful break. It was a break from seeing Levi struggle in so many areas, specifically at school, to seeing him just be thrilled to be there. And then my other kids, I barely got to see them because, well, that's not true. My daughter is not a super fan of going to anything away from us. And I think that very much stems essentially the trauma from last year. And so she wasn't a big fan of going to the kids' areas, which my other kids would have been. And that was fine. My extended family was there a little bit. So we got little breaks from her, but my in-between kids. So all of my kids, I guess it's only two others. So my 11-year-old and my 15-year-old, they were just cruising around like independent young people. And they were helping themselves to pizza and ice cream all day long and living their best life. And so I definitely appreciated the independence they could have on this ship. And I appreciated taking a break from parenting them in terms of letting them eat ice cream and pizza and whatever else all day long. There's an inherent safeness because one, they were in group, and two, they really couldn't get lost. And, the things that could happen weren't so bad. So those are pretty great. One thing that I kind of had, I wouldn't say it was a panic attack, but I had this moment several days before we got on the ship of, oh no, I should have done more to alert the ship of Levi's medical conditions. I should have made sure that the physician on board was able to support Levi, and I didn't. And so I had this moment where I was like, oh, did I make a major misstep here? And for me, where I landed, I was like, you know what? He's very stable right now. Yes, there's several things that could require him urgent medical help. I'm bringing some of the interventions that we would need for him. And after that, I'm just going to trust that they have a good plan if someone needs emergent help on the ship that they can't provide. And for me, that was enough. Now, some of you might be like, oh my gosh, Kara, that was like completely irresponsible. And maybe it was, but that is just where I landed. And for me, it gave me access to being able to rest and to not worry. Other than that, one of my favorite parts was snorkeling. I love snorkeling. I really love snorkeling. And I do go out every once in a while here in San Diego, but it's definitely a treat. So we got to snorkel down in Cabo, and I saw all sorts of fish and I was flipping my fins and just having a great old time. Something else I wanted to share as a personal update is that we had a scan. So we were scanning every 3 months as of last month to look and see what the effects of radiation were. We were seeing, what would be normal things happening, but really until you see those tumors start to shrink, you don't entirely know that that's the direction we're going. And so we had a scan mid-March, and just before we left on this trip, we got the results that both of the tumors, and they're quite small at this point, but regardless, it's great to see them shrinking. His oncologist was thrilled. I was thrilled. She felt so assured by what she saw that she felt very comfortable moving to 6-month scans. So that, it's not just the celebration of, yay, he's looking like he's kind of moving where we want him to go. It's also the logistics of, oh, yay, I don't have to do all of the things to do scans in 3 months. I can wait 6 months. So that is a very welcome change for us. And we already have that one on the schedule. They always seem to fall right around my birthday. Happy birthday. And okay, so we had these really amazing pieces of news to be able to go into the trip with. And I know my husband, funny thing is we had a oncology appointment the day of leaving for the cruise. So at 9 a.m, we met with the oncologist and we had to leave on the trip at 11:30. And my husband, when I had told him that, he's like, I don't want to meet with them before. Like, I don't want to have that news before we go on this trip. And I pushed for the other way around. It's like, babe, we're going to have to, either way, we're going to have to digest the news. I'd rather do it when we're floating in the middle of the ocean having fun than not. So, there's always that possibility that we hold that it's not the news that we wanted. And the last thing that I want to share in celebrations is that we are expecting to be in a clinical trial that could really help Levi. And we've been anticipating this for a bit. It was actually supposed to start in March. And now we're in April, but it's still moving forward, and I'm just really excited. It's also allowing me to be with this area of his health that is not going very well, and it's allowing me kind of not to worry about it because I'm like, okay, there is something out there that maybe will help us. And I know so many of you are in this situation too, where you're having to live with these unanswerable questions, these parts of your child's health that you really don't have help with. And so I know that you'll be able to feel it with me, the relief, when you get a little bit of opportunity to shift some of the challenges that our kids deal with. So with those updates, I want to just kind of look at this trip. And for me, I'm really noticing the value of stepping away. So this is the thing I want you to take from this, is really looking at the value of stepping away through the lens of creating it on purpose. Because yes, I planned this trip clearly, but I don't think I realized how badly I really needed it. And we're going to look at kind of what was going on before. And you'll also, I think, agree, yes, I needed it. And also you'll probably think, and I need one too. So before the break, I look at this couple weeks leading up to the trip, they were intense. Like I was managing 2 IEPs. My youngest daughter and Levi have an IEP. And our school does this thing called exhibition, which is really cool. They exhibit their work, but it also means that you're going to go to the school during the night for several hours to support your child and to look at all of the things, which is very fun, but it's a very highly stimulating environment, which for me can get kind of overwhelming. And it also just logistically is, it's during dinner time. And so all the things. So we had 3 events after school in the week leading up to our trip. And that just felt intense. And prior to that, we had a very intense medical appointment week. And it was so funny. So I just happened to mention some of this to my therapist, and she looked at me and she was like speechless. She's like, I don't know how you do that. I was like, well, it's kind of normal. Like, this is what I do. I don't put too much thought to it anymore. I mean, sometimes I definitely reflect and notice, oh, wow, that was a lot. And it was, I guess, I don't know if validating is the right word, but it really had me step back into recognizing how my normal is so different from many people's normal. And for me, it helped to really acknowledge the load that we carry. Because I think so many of us just kind of naturalize into the life that we have. We don't stop and think about it. We don't stop and acknowledge ourselves for what we do. And I think it's important to stop and acknowledge ourselves. Like I said, I was like, I don't think about it that much, but I think it is important to think about it, to acknowledge, just to celebrate ourselves and our ability to do what we do, but also to recognize that because of what we do, we may need to make adjustments. We may need to support ourselves in different ways than other people just because this is our normal. Anyhow, I just was really kind of shocking that I think, I don't expect her to really understand, but it was really funny to see her response to that. All right. So back to this stepping away. Now I knew I was going to be on a ship, and I knew I wouldn't have a lot of cell access. I knew I wouldn't have a lot of access to all the things on our phones. Right. And shout out to one of our listeners, Brooke T, because I was actually on a retreat with her, and she set her phone to, you know how the iPhones have like the different focus settings and that you can customize one? Well, she made a custom setting for the retreat, and it was, I think, her husband could call her. It was called the retreat setting. And I was like, that is brilliant. And so I did something similar where I made a cruise focus. Basically, everyone that needed to contact me would have been on the ship. So I really didn't need to get any phone calls or any texts from anybody. All of my, podcast episodes, my editor was handling all that. She was handling social media. And so everything was handled, thankfully. And so I just really was very intentional about being where I was, that was on the ship, and not anywhere else, not trying to be both at one time. I mean, I was looking forward to this for a while, but I really don't think I realized how burned out I was. I was just going and going and going. And I think when you're in that space, you don't really see the impact of trying to keep that pace. I mean, I think we know we're tired, but I also think that we usually just keep putting one foot after another. So I knew this break was coming. I knew I needed it, but now looking back, I see what I've gained from it. And that's kind of what I wanted to share. When coming back from this trip, what I have access to now is just being farther from all the challenges that we had, specifically for me, IEP season. And for me, it just takes some of the urgency and some of the intensity away that allows me to kind of land and to come with more intention versus just being more reactionary. That for me leaves me coming back feeling energized. It leaves me coming back feeling excited. It leaves me coming back feeling ready to actually have these next conversations. It just feels different. It feels different than before I left. So the last thing I think that's important to really look at for me, and I'm guessing for you as well, is that I recognize now looking back that I really didn't have a lot to give. before. I was kind of, my tanks got low. As intentional as I am on trying to fill my tanks and ask for help, you guys know I'm always kind of trying to encourage us all to do that. And I try to do that as well, obviously. As much as I do try, my tank still got low. My tank still probably got low enough to where I don't know that it would have been sustainable had I not taken a break. And obviously that was a kind of an intense time. When I get to that place energetically, I'll know that I need to do something to give myself a break. And that's kind of what I wanted to lean in here. And so whether you have something coming up that you expect a break or whether you don't, I want to just kind of look at how to create this on purpose. And here's the thing. I'm going to give a couple just ideas, some things to look at in terms of how you can create a break for yourself. Some of you are going to have immediate responses or reactions or resistance to these. You're going to say, that won't work for me because. You're going to say, yeah, but. And you're going to perhaps look at my situation or another person's situation and say, well, mine is different. And you're going to kind of disqualify yourself from being able to do the thing. And in this case, it's taking a break. And so I want you to watch for those things that come up as your resistance. Those are really important clues. I want you to consider that those are your breadcrumbs to get back to the place where you actually feel like you are in power in your life, like you feel like you like your life, you enjoy, you have balance, all the things. So pay special attention to what comes up. And so these are just simple ideas. These are things to look at. So clearly the basic, obviously, like scheduling a trip like this, like that would be one way to get a break. But I think bring in the intention of, well, what are you taking a break from? In this case, for me, it was taking a break from all the cooking and all the cleaning and all the calls and all the appointments and all the things that are part of our normal life. So it was a break from everything, which was great. Now, for me, some trips, like we like to camp, those are breaks, but not breaks from a lot of the work. And for me, a different kind of break and don't offer the same kind of experience that this one did. So if you are like, yeah, Kara, I can't get away, perhaps you consider taking an intentional season of break from all your appointments. Maybe you say, okay, I'm going to take 1 or 2 weeks and I'm going to cancel all therapies. I'm going to cancel all IEP conversations. I'm going to cancel all or move or not schedule all appointments. And you're just going to allow yourself to do, perhaps in this case, the bare minimum, and hopefully fill the spaces with rest, with restoration, perhaps even fun enjoyment. So that is one way that you don't actually have to leave your home. Perhaps leaving your home is medically very complicated, and that you can get some rest. Another way to do it is actually plan to get away just you. So solo trip, like a women's retreat or a special needs mom retreat would be a great way to do that. And then also there's, the value of getting away as a couple. And I know these are the logistics for me even come up with this one because we don't have a large handful of people that can watch all of our kids when we're gone. So it does take some intentionality. And I'm in a season where I'm going to need to be rebuilding that team of mine. The other thing that I think really helped me in this is we actually have a trip already planned in July, which again, this is a very abnormal year for us. It's kind of amazing. I'm loving it in terms of having 2 really fun trips. And coming back from the first trip was, like the end of a trip is always kind of sad. It's like when Christmas is over, you're like, oh, well, that's a bummer. Now we have this other trip to look forward to. And for me, I was like, oh, I really like having something exciting and fun and different than our normal life to be excited about and to look forward to. And to know that I'm going to also get a very extended break during that season as well. So that was really, really helpful. So if you feel spent, if you feel like you hear these ideas and you're like, yeah, none of those, I can't do any of those. If you have nothing left for you, and you can't even imagine getting to a place where you feel like this rested and ready and excited to go into that next step or stage to support yourself and your child, then I want you to consider that 1, you won't be there forever. And 2, I would urge you to consider what support you might need to perhaps move through that season with a little bit more speed. Like, let's not just have you linger there. Let's get you through it. And the 2 things I would recommend is to schedule an activation session. If you think, okay, great, I like this idea. Taking a break sounds great, but here's all the places I feel stuck. An activation session would be perfect to explore this and provide tons of value as this community listens along with you and applies the same thing to themselves. Second place is actually, these are the kinds of things we look at and we create with intention in Pathway to Peace. So this kind of thing where we're looking at where we're kind of feeling stuck or where we're feeling stopped, or even if it's not about taking a break intentionally, even if it's just like, I feel so spent and burnt out, I can't keep going. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at in Pathway to Peace. All right. I want to shift into the second story. And this one I'm calling letting go of the fight. As I mentioned before, we are in IEP season. And we're on the third meeting for my son's IEP, third of who knows how many. And we're getting him ready to go to high school. So I think there's a lot of charge and energy that we have as we're preparing him. And my youngest, my daughter, also has an IEP. It's a nice thin one, I will say. In my eyes, like literally the easiest IEP to manage up until this last perhaps month or two. So her service provider came to me and said, hey, look, she's doing fantastic. I think we should get her out. Let's get her off this IEP. She didn't say exactly like that. She, just kind of said, hey, I don't think she needs the support anymore. I voiced some concerns about her potentially exiting, and we kind of went back and forth for a while, and it seemed like she was kind of understanding where I was coming from for a bit, but then she came back and really again pushed to assess an exit. And energy around this for me, it was taking up a lot of space because I'm kind of like, I just want you to service her on her IEP. I don't want to have a lot of more conversations about this. It didn't occur to me as though she was really listening and understanding our concerns. We were at a standstill. She sees it one way, I see it another. And I don't know. I mean, I don't like conflict. So this was not my favorite experience to have. And yes, I know my rights as a parent, and I know that I could have many options to move forward. But mostly I didn't feel like I had the energy to spend in both IEPs at one time. I found myself feeling super annoyed, feeling frustrated, and actually feeling a little powerless because this woman is particularly strong in voicing her opinions and citing the law and kind of leaning on, the laws around IEPs to really insist that we go this way. So I found myself in the middle of this and really stuck in she's wrong, I'm right. And really trying to figure out how to prove and how to essentially get what I wanted. And what I wanted was her to just keep servicing my daughter. Now, I want to take a little break from the story to explain something called context. So through my coaching eyes, one of the things I'm always looking for is what context are we coming from? Now, context, I think one of the best ways to describe it is it's what are the lenses in which we're looking at something. So if you perhaps imagine that you have a green pair of sunglasses on, you would see the world and it would all be tinted green. And if somebody tried to come and tell you, oh, no, that thing over there is purple, you'd be like, no, it's green. And you really wouldn't be able to listen to alternative ideas. You'd be very probably fixed on how things are through the lens that you were looking at. Now, when you take those glasses off, you're able to see things that you weren't able to see before. You're able to see things differently. And so that's just an example of a context. So when we're in any given context, it's really just telling us that we're looking at something through a certain lens. It's going to shade it a certain way. Now, it's neither good or bad. It's just something to notice when we are doing something. And so I mentioned before, I found myself in the middle of a right-wrong context. And for me, I get real activated when I'm in this kind of context. Who likes to be wrong, right? And so in this space, I can get very strong. I can get very pushy, I would even say, and perhaps even a little bit aggressive when somebody I care about is at threat, which would be my child. It just doesn't feel good for me to come from this energy. It actually is something that I used to lean on a lot prior to really learning about this. But now I've recognized that actually it's not my highest and best way of coming. It doesn't necessarily create what I ultimately want, but I would say it is a fallback that I lean on too. So back to the little story in terms of the fight that I found myself in. So I'm stuck in this right, wrong. I'm spinning my wheels trying to figure out how to prove her wrong. I'm Googling. I'm doing all the things to really state my case. And again, that did not feel very good. And so what I ultimately figured out is it was actually very quickly. So I remember exactly where I was. I was driving from home to school to get my kids. And it was like, that's how I get out of the fight. And for me, it was asking a different question. It was instead of asking, how do I prove her wrong? How do I show her where she's wrong? And I'm speaking about the speech provider, to shifting to saying, what does Cambria need? And so when I asked the question, what does Cambria need? I said, I don't actually know. I'm not 100% sure what she needs. Perhaps her provider is accurate and says, yes, she doesn't need speech. Perhaps I don't see something that I need to see. And in this case, when I asked the question of what does Cambria need, I was very quickly able to be like, okay, I'm going to figure out what she needs. I'm going to do the work over here. It's my responsibility to figure out what she needs. And then I could easily advocate for that. That was where I was kind of stuck. Like I was in this right, wrong context, but I was also kind of lost because I was like, well, she says she doesn't need it. I think she does, but I'm also not a speech professional. So that gets a little tricky. I was able to say, okay, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to be able to then learn what my daughter knows. And from there, I can move forward. When I shift this context, so for me, shifting from she's wrong, I'm right, into, for me, really the context is just letting go of the rightness or the wrongness and shifting to be curious at what Cambria needs. That's my daughter. For me, this allows me to drop the defense, to drop the energy that I was spending on this topic. Because now all I have to do is do the plan that I came up with, which was for me to bring in a private speech person that we have a relationship with, to have her come do an informal assessment, to coach me and to give me the information I need to confidently move forward and advocate for what my daughter needs. Now, do you hear even the energy that has? Like it's very neutral. It's like easy. It actually feels easy now, whereas before it was not feeling easy. It was feeling like a fight. And again, like a fight over something that I'm like, this is not something that I ever expected to have to be a contentious IEP. I wanted to share that story with you because I think it's so valuable because so many of us come into these right, wrong, to these kind of fight situations. I mean, we are advocating for our child everywhere. So naturally, we're going to find ourselves into this context. So if you're tired of this fight with your husband, with your school, with your doctors, with insurance, then this message might be made just for you. So let's look at how to apply this beyond. It's not always about hiring a third party. It's not always about getting even more information. It's really about being able to notice where you are in terms of your context and to be able to shift it. Now, here's the trick here. This is really hard to do alone. It's really difficult. So this can happen in relationships. People can reflect back to you and tell you what they see, which can help you shift your context. And this is essentially the job of a coach. That what my job is to listen to and find context, to reflect it back, and to help my client have access to a different way of being. And so, yes, this is another plug for the different ways I support my people, because it is so valuable to not do this alone. And it's the reason I don't do this alone. I still have coaches and people in my life that I know I can go to when I need to get the insight that I cannot get on my own. It's like you can't see the back of your head. If you feel stuck and it feels so real to you and it feels so concrete, it is very likely there are things in your life that you don't see that would provide you with a way forward, with access to peace. And I want to point out here, right, I don't have this whole situation resolved. I don't have all the things now completely done. However, I do have peace now. I don't have to go wait and see what happens with this IEP to feel settled. I can feel settled now. And so that is the gift of being able to do this work I'm going to land this plane because I'm starting to get excited. I'm starting to get fired up, and I was intending for this to be a shorter episode. So I'm going to leave you with that. And for those of you that are in the middle of spring break or perhaps just starting, may the force be with you. I'm right there with you. And it's a great time to come over to the podcast community over on Facebook. The link is in the show notes, and to kind of link arms. Let's do this together. Let's encourage each other as we go through these unstructured seasons, which for many of us are a little tricky. All right. We will see you on the next episode. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.